How to recreate the Doom Eternal logo in Photoshop, a vectormade.com tutorial. Hey guys, Kerry Hawkins here with another VectorMade tutorial. I saw the Doom Eternal trailer the other day and I'm a big gamer fan, so I like the way their logo looks. It's real cool. It's got a lot of texture to it, a lot of like beveling effects and stuff. So I thought it'd be cool to show you guys a basic tutorial on how you might go about making something similar. This is not going to be the exact same look as the Doom Eternal logo because I don't have the access to the exact same textures they use. So I just found stuff that looked very similar and went with it that way. So let's jump in, all right? What you want to do is come over to File, New, and then do 1920 by 1080. I went ahead and did 144 pixels per inch just to have a little bit more high quality on the textures. So go ahead and do that and hit create, and then you'll have a blank screen from which to work from. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to bring in some shapes that I created that are vector in Illustrator. So let me just run over to Illustrator real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is what I created in Illustrator. This is a vectorized version of the logo. So as you can see, there's all these different shapes that I've made. The text is a different shape. There's a different red shape here. These are different shapes, etc. Basically, if you don't know how to do this, I'll leave a description link below and also put a card up above that will link back to how to vectorize a logo, because I don't want to go into all of that here, but just know that I created each of these shapes. This is like the background shape for the D and the O. There's the O, there's the M. Each one of these is individual. These little pieces here, I've got like a circle back here that's by itself. And the reason why I have these separated like that is because when I bring them into Photoshop, I want to give each one of these its own bevel effect. So you'll see how that plays out later on in the video. Okay, so we're back in Photoshop. This is our document we just created. Let's go ahead and fill it in with black with the paint bucket tool. And make sure you've got black selected. Fill that in so we can see stuff. And then we're going to come back into Illustrator. What I would suggest you do is grab everything. So I'm highlighting everything, clicking and dragging, and then I'm hitting Control C to copy. I'm going to go back in here and hit Control V to paste in a smart object. So just like that, boom, it's pasted in. And the reason this is gray is just so I could easily see it in Illustrator, but we'll make it white, you'll see. Now what I would do is just come back in here and grab each of these selections independently. So like we'll group that and we'll copy. Actually, I'll make it white real quick and copy and paste that in like so. So the reason why we did this first one is so we know where to place everything, because we're going to bring stuff in separately as different elements so that I can change certain aspects of each part instead of having to alter the whole thing. Make sense? Because I'll want to have different bevel effects for these and different textures and such. So we'll just use that so we know where we are, and we'll title that Doom over here on that layer. Come back over here and grab the stuff in the background. I just did a shift click to deselect things that were selected and to select new objects. And as you can see, it's going to get all this background. So again, Control C, come over here. We'll go ahead and paste that, and that needs to be about right there, it looks like. And we'll go ahead and put that behind the Doom and maybe just lower it a little. I think it needs to be lowered just a tad. Yeah. All right, let's do that. Doom shadow. It's not really a shadow, but it's kind of a shadow. And then we'll grab, I think we just want to grab this big piece in the middle. So we'll grab that, come in here, smart object, scroll it down to about, I think it's about right there. Hit OK. Let's see, red eternal background. And then we'll come in here and grab, we could probably do these all together. So yeah, I'll just grab all those little bits, okay? And then we'll do this circle back here by itself. Let's put those in, smart object, okay. And just line them up. And you might have to come in and really look at it to make sure everything's going to be in the right spot. That's looking pretty good. I think that's accurate. Might be a little bit off. Yeah, that's probably better right there. So let's say red, flare. Not sure what to call it. And then we'll grab this little circle, put that sucker in there, and it goes about there somewhere. That's pretty close, maybe over just a tad. Just using the arrow keys to move it like 1 pixel at a time. That looks good. Then we'll grab the Eternal logo text. I'm going to go ahead and name this red circle. And we'll put the text in as well. And I'll probably have to get rid of, let's just say okay, and then get rid of these 3 so I can line that up as well. All right, and then we can bring those back and get rid of the big vector object. And now we're in here, and we could probably come in and do just a little bit of cleanup on this too if we had to. But I don't know that it's going to matter all that much. You know, by the time we throw in the effects, you really won't be able to see a whole lot of this extra junk anyway. So I think this is perfect. This will be just fine. But now we have everything in here, and we can start adding some cool effects to this. So first thing we want to do is let's take the Doom layer visibly out so we can see the stuff behind. And we'll go ahead and go to our Doom shadow layer and double click on that to pull up the layer style menu. We're going to add a gradient overlay, and it needs to look like this. I've already done this, so it's kind of popping up with some automatic settings for me. Just normal 100%, and I have these are the colors. If I go to my dark setting here, you've got 340301 for the dark red. I have the slider here pulled to 74%. Excuse me. Let me just click on that, 74%. And then I've got the lighter red as a 7A2333. And so that's what that looks like. Let me just toggle that on and off real quick. Just laying over this gradient so that we're recoloring the artwork basically. The next thing we'll want to do is come to our Doom layer here, double click on it to pull up the layer style. We're going to add a bevel and emboss effect, and here are the settings. Do inner bevel, chisel hard, 100% depth, direction is up, size is 5 pixels, no softening, angle is 120, and 30 for the altitude. And then this should stay like this, should be the default. Highlight mode I have on normal at 100% opacity with the 999999 hexadecimal color. And then I have the shadow mode for multiply with 333333 on the color there. Just throwing in some pretty standard lighter and darker grays to give it this nice beveled look. And we're also going to add a drop shadow. I've got that on multiply, and I've just got a nice solid black and 10 distance, 10 size, 75% opacity, 90-degree angle on that one. Just don't want it to look like it's coming from, left or right. Just want it straight up and down. So that's kind of what that looks like. Hit OK and you're done there. Okay, the next layer we want to get is the red Eternal background layer. So we'll double click on that and we'll apply a bevel and emboss. And the settings are going to be inner bevel, chisel hard, 100% up, 5 on the size. We're going to do some 3 softening on this one, and then 90 for the angle, 30 for the altitude. Leave these the same. Linear light and go full on 100% white on that, and then an overlay on the shadow and pick the values here. For your red on the overlay, hit OK. You want to go ahead and check under bevel and emboss, click contour, and then use this third setting here, which is like an inverted cone with anti-aliasing checked. And then we're going to add also a gradient overlay, and it's set to normal, and here are going to be the colors. I'll just click on this and show you 5E242A, and that one's going to be at 15%. This one's at 50, and this is going to be E06560, and then another of the same color we just did at an 85% location. and then hit OK a whole bunch, and that's what you'll end up with. Now, what I would do is just go ahead and drag these over to other layers. And the cool thing is, when you've already got effects built, like you can just hold Alt and then click on that effects icon and drag it to a new layer, and it will copy everything. So if we want to copy it to the red flare, you'll see my icon turns into two mice icons, or cursor icons. There's a black and a white, and I can release here on red flare, and it will give those same qualities to that. And if I do the same thing to, let's find it, the red circle, it'll also apply it there too. Now, one thing I want to do with the flare is actually just come in here, and I'm in the bevel and emboss section. I'm going to drop that down to 3 and 2 because it's not quite as severe as this first one. I think the circle in the background we can leave at the 5 and 3, but I think we want 3 and 2 for the smaller pieces here. The next thing we want to grab is the Eternal Text layer. Double click on that, bring up the layer style. We'll also be throwing a bevel and emboss. This one's going to be an outer bevel. Chisel hard. We're going to go down and just do 1 pixel. And then we're going to come in here, make sure this is at 90/30. Default settings on contour. Linear light, and you want this color value at 100%. And then you want multiply with this color value, also at 100%. And then one other thing we're going to add is an outer glow. Hard light, 100%. Here's your value to give it that nice kind of rich red, like it's on fire, or it's got a lot of energy kind of feel. And those are your values. And then you want the spread to be 10%. Spread just kind of like thickens up the outer glow. If it was 100%, it's almost like a solid line. It's more like a stroke. And then the size is 52 pixels. Okay, now that we've got the shapes out of the way, we've got some cool beveling effects and some coloring about where we want, we're going to go through and add all the textures to everything. So let's start off with the Doom words. Words, it's just one word, Carrie. Place linked. I'm going to put in a subtle grunge texture. This is just stuff you're going to have to get on your own. You can find them on Google. You can, pick these up over the years like I have. But I want something subtle. It's not got too much dark to it, but you can see some good contrast in some of these pieces here. And I'm going to shape it to where it's just slightly bigger than the text. That's good. Hit OK. And then I'm going to right click on it and go create clipping mask. And that will make the texture only show up where the bottom layer that I just created the mask to, in this case, the Doom text, is. Now, the one thing we don't want is we don't want all this coloring in here. We just want the cool texture. So first you need to right click on this layer, which is a smart object, and just say rasterize layer. Then come up to image adjustments and desaturate. That will take out all the color, and now you're left with this really cool texture that's going over your white text, kind of giving it a little bit of gray though. Now, another cool thing you can do with textures, double click on that layer that we just made, and you'll have these blending options at the very bottom here that say blend if gray. And then you want to go into these sliders for this layer. And I want to pull some of the lights out of the layer, the lighter areas. I want to keep these darker spots, but I don't necessarily want all of the lighter texture. Actually, in the original, there's quite a bit of white in the middle of the logo where there isn't very much visible texture. So what you want to do is click and drag this. But if you just click and drag, you're going to get the full slider like this, and see what it does as I click and drag. It kind of removes everything and all at once and too much. So what you should do is just click on the left part while you are holding Alt, and it will give you a slider that goes from the point that you started at to wherever you end. And we're going to end about 181. I think that looks good. So basically it's taking out the lights from the layer, but in a gradual way, in a range that starts from 255, goes down to 181. and then just hit OK. And now while you're still selected on that layer, go ahead and hit Control J to create a copy. And then you'll have to right click on that copy and say create clipping mask. And it basically is the exact same thing. We're going to come up here to edit, and we're going to transform and flip horizontal. So we've got it on both sides now. Because the way it was a little too dark over here and not enough dark on that side, but we want it on both places. Now the only other thing we need to do is I don't want to have too much of this mirroring each other. So we're going to come in with the erase tool and just make sure that your hardness is set down to 0 and start erasing some stuff. And let me get this back up. And we're just going to do like that and kind of take out some of these spots. I might even take out some of the mids because I don't really want the middle of the words to be very textured. I kind of want that to be left. I probably don't even want that. I think I just want to get rid of some of this because we're going to add some more effects, and so it's going to look very different by the time we're done. I'm going to keep some of that. But just kind of going over, brushing out some of these mid areas that we don't really need. And this, again, this is going to be just up to your personal preference. You do this however you see fit, but I don't want too much texture in all the spots. And again, we're going to cut out a lot of it anyway, so it'll look better once we do all of these things together. Sometimes I just go through and just click when I'm doing this because when you're brushing, you can kind of tell that you've been brushing, going back and forth. But if you just click, it gives a nice little soft, less defined area as long as your hardness is set all the way down to 0. I just feel like it looks a little more natural when you do it that way. It's less accurate, but it looks natural. I think that's fine. All right, I'm going to stop messing with it there. Let's add a few other textures. Okay, I'm going to add one more texture to Doom. Actually, I think I'm going to do 2 more. One of them I'm going to add is this. Cool looking, old looking wall. Just has some nice smearing looks here. And some erosion on it too, like it's been shot at or something like that. And do the same thing, right click, create clipping mask. Go ahead and right click, rasterize the layer, image adjustments, desaturate. Now for this one, you'll do the same thing on the blends, but we're going to do a lot of different stuff. We're going to pull this stuff way up here to about here somewhere, 215, maybe 216, something like that. And then pull this way into about 156. We'll do, let's see, and then pull this down to 93. And we're going to set this to multiply, just to give it a little extra something. So here's what it looked like without. Here's what it looks like with. It just adds a little bit of this smearing, ugly, nasty kind of grunge, right? So without it, it's got grunge for sure, but with it you've got a little extra just decay going on in there. I'm going to add just one more texture layer to the Doom layer, and that is this one here. I'll go ahead and rotate that. Expand it just a little bit. Right click, create clipping mask. Go ahead and rasterize. And do the same thing, image adjustments, desaturate. And then double click on it. We'll do a color burn on this one. I want this to be a little more harsh. But we'll soften it up down here. Let's do about there, and then come down to about here, and maybe leave this one at like that. So you can see the difference. Just adding a little bit of harshness and darkness to some of these areas and adding a little bit more texture to it. So I think our doom is getting to where it's pretty well done now. I don't think I would mess with it too much more. I think I like where it is. We might go in and change a few things, but just leave that up to your personal preference. If you want to thicken up some of this stuff somewhere, you can always go back in and change some of the sliders or add a new texture to it as well. But I mean, that's pretty good. That looks nice and grungy, and you can't really tell where one of the textures starts and the other one's end. It all kind of flows together as one big nasty looking texture piece. Next, we're going to want to add some texture to the eternal section. But first, let's go ahead and grab Doom and then all of the textures we created and just shift click, right? I'm clicking here, shift click to grab everything here, and then Control G, just put it in a group, call it Doom, and then it just makes it nice and tidy. That way we can kind of get rid of everything in there if we wanted to. So the next thing we'll do is these eternal things. So let's do the let's just do the red parts first, and we'll want it to be on all of these. And I'll probably add another 3 textures or so. I think I'll do this one. And let's pull it in just to make it a little closer to the size. We'll do that. I'm going to make I'm going to make another copy of it. And I'm going to invert it. Let's do that one first. Let's invert. Excuse me, I don't want to open. Press too many buttons. So I inverted that. And then let's go ahead and rasterize that effect. And then I think we'll just go in and change some of the blending here. Let's see. 0, 100 and what? 89, 90. Yeah, that's fine. Somewhere in there. And then we'll do, I think we're going to take out some of this. So let's do 166, 165. That's fine. That's good. And then all the way to the top for that. We'll do that. So again, it's just a pretty subtle looking texture, right? Nothing too crazy going on in that one. But I may want to do something else with that eventually. Let's just leave it there for now. I'm gonna select I want this texture to be only applied to the eternal red background stuff. But I've got 3 sections, right? Because I wanted to have different beveling effects. So go ahead and Control click on the red flare, or whichever one, doesn't matter which, it'll show up here. And then Control plus Shift, and you'll get a plus sign on the others. So I'm clicking all 3 layers, right? To get everything selected in a selection like this. So let me do that again. I'm Control clicking on one, and then Control plus Shift to click on the other 2 to give myself a full selection of all the red pieces that are here. Now that I've got this marching ants all around everything I want, I'm going to have this layer I just created selected and come down here to create this layer mask. And that will make it only show up in the places that are shown here in the layer mask. And the cool thing about the layer mask is you can come in here later and change this. So if you want to get your brush tool and use black or white, you can paint in on the layer mask and it will reveal more or less of the layer behind. So let me just do this to take out some spots if I wanted to. Back up and do it like that. And I might just get rid of that. Maybe some of these highlights over here. Maybe just leave it where it's kind of subtle like that. So anyway, that's something cool you can do. And of course, if you'd hated that idea, just come back later and add the white. And you can add even more texture. Now, the only bad part about that is, of course, I'm going outside of my lines here, so you'd have to just be more careful. But that's the gist of that one. Now, with this other, let's grab this non-inverted version. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm Control clicking, Control plus Shift click, and again. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to add that mask. And I'm going to make this one blend as a divide. Do that. And I think that I may just do that and maybe just soften up a couple things here. Again, going into my mask and just kind of, let's paint with a black here to make sure it's not too overwhelming. I just think I want a little bit of white at the top. I don't really want any at the bottom here. Yeah, I think that'll do. That'll do for now. That'll do, pig. All right. We're going to grab one more texture. And I think I want to grab this one. Same thing, and I resize it just a bit. And then I'm going to Control and then Shift Control to get my stuff. Create a clipping mask again. And go ahead and rasterize that layer. Image adjustments. Desaturate that layer. And then I think I'm going to come in here and do some other stuff, like maybe overlay for this one. Yeah. I'm going to do an overlay. Overlay looks good. And then let's do some changes here. Let's do, don't want this. No. I like the darks in there. I want to leave the darks. I think I just want to get rid of some of the lights. Maybe do a little bit. We'll do a little bit of darks. We'll get rid of just a tiny bit of that. And maybe we do a slider to just let that light, brighter parts underneath show up. Just a little. Yeah. I like that. You know, mess around with this stuff. This is where there's not really a science to this part. This is just know how these things work so that you can get the look that you want. And I'm going to come in here and probably mess with this layer too. Funny thing about doing this is it's really hard to get the exact same look every time you do it. So, because every one of these layers is going to be just a little bit different than the last. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come in here and mess around with this one again. Ooh, no, I don't like those. What if we do multiply? No, I don't like multiply. Color burn? Maybe darker color. I kind of like that one. Or hard light. That looks kind of cool. Hard mix. I don't want screen. Let's just stick with darker color. And what about this? I mean, I think that's cool. We'll just leave it right there. There's nothing wrong with that look. It's a little different than even the way I did it the first time, but I still like it. All right, let's take all of the texture that we did to the red stuff, kind of group all of that. I'll just call this the red. How about just red? And let's add some stuff to Eternal. I want to do some metal textures. Like, I like this one. It's a nice brushed looking metal. And we'll lay that over there. And then I control click on to the Eternal text layer and come over here and create a clipping mask that way. And we're gonna see what we want to do with that. Maybe, do I want to do a multiply? Probably a multiply or a linear burn or something. What's color burn? Linear burn, multiply. It's all pretty much the same. So I think I'll just go with that. And then I'm gonna come in here to my my layer mask here, and I'm going to kind of just soften it up, but not too much. I think we'll do more softening here in the middle, and then a little bit less as we get to the edges. See, I don't want a whole lot of metal texture to it. I just want a little bit, mostly on the sides, like that. And then I'm just going to add maybe a little bit more detail. I'm going to do a new layer. I'm going to grab my gradient tool. Let's change this to, a darker gray. We'll just add a little bit of gradient that goes, maybe not quite so. Let's do that and see what that looks like. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I control click on my eternal layer, create another mask. Yeah, voila. Let's do this to multiply or linear burn. Maybe drop down the opacity a little bit. 50% looks good. And then maybe I'm going to unlink these so that I can move this without affecting the layer mask. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. Yeah, something like that, just to have a little bit of difference. I think the original had something along those lines, if I recall, just a little bit of shading over here in that corner. Yeah, I think we're good, man. I think that's really all we need to do. You might come in later and sort of mess with this background layer even some more, add some like lighting effects, even a little bit of shading or something to the background. But you can kind of see how you do this sort of logo, adding some of these textures and such. It's pretty simple, and really it's just a lot of playing around with things, remembering to use desaturate a lot and mess with the levels that are in there. So anyway, let me know what you guys thought about this tutorial. Leave some comments down below. I know it was a rather long one, so if you stuck all the way to the end, then congrats to you. But let me know what you think, what you'd like to see, if this was helpful to you, and I will see you guys in the next video.